Thank you, Sally.
Oh, here he is.
So Ken, we're on to your item now. We've read the report and you don't need to speak to it. Are there any questions on
What
that?
page is that?
It's
Sorry.
on page 67.
I'll move.
Councillor,
I'll second.
the Deputy Mayor has moved and Councillor Young has seconded. Are there any questions for Ken on this? Yes, Councillor McPherson?
It was just, I just needed to check the yellow on the map, Ken. The yellow area along the
67.
whatever northern end, I suppose, of the red part of the gully. Do we already own that?
Not the yellow area, we don't.
So how does that get to become a reserve? Apart from it being zoned, obviously, who owns it now and how does it become public?
The land, I mean, as and when there is subdivisional work undertaken within the area, the land, I guess, will be, it'll be sought for to add to the reserve.
But haven't we already got subdivision in that area, adjoining that at least at the end closest to the red part? I'm pretty sure that some of the area down there is new, if not most of it, right down the bottom of the yellow.
Yes, well, at the moment, I mean, the area that we have, the yellow line was indicating the joined up nature between the two areas, and it's the red area that we're looking to purchase now. We haven't got the area that's shown in yellow.
Yeah, Your Worship, so this is my problem with this sort of report, because it's quite narrowly confined to the property part, which is Ken's job. But I want to look at the slightly bigger picture. When's it all coming in? How's it coming in? Are there going to be more costs associated? And I don't
So those are questions that Ken would be able to answer, I would have thought. I mean, this is, as I read this report, we are contractually required to purchase this land at a trigger point, and that's what this report's about?
That's right, the red area, yes.
Right.
Yes.
So Councillor McPherson's questions are related to, well, as a whole, what's the plan, basically,
I
for
want a
that?
holistic view, even a context.
Okay, so, I mean, it's not relevant, can I suggest, Councillor McPherson, to this report, because we're contractually required to purchase this area at a tipping point, as I
I'm
understand.
sorry, Your
That's
Worship,
right?
I beg to differ, because I think when we get reports like this that only relate to small components within a bigger picture, we should at least have some reference to the bigger picture and how that's going to be achieved, so that we can see when things are going to happen. And that, I think that's one of the things that this council and previous council have been calling for quite a while, that we don't just get the legal bare minimum, in other words.
So Sally can answer your question, I believe.
If I can through the chair, under item 22 within the report, we're identifying that we're currently collating a list of all land purchases to come back under consent applications to this forum under the Finance Committee, so that will include if there's any other consent conditions out there that relate to a holistic view. In terms of this area, the land opposite on the other side of the yellow area is still unsubdivided, so there is quite a bit within this area still to come online for council.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sorry that doesn't really address things, because I believe, from my knowledge of that area and having actually driven down it relatively recently, and I can't see the names of those streets exactly, but I can now, McCain Place is has got some brand new housing, brand new subdivision in, and my problem, Your Worship, is all of those properties on the one side of that road anyway, back onto the yellow future reserve area, let's call it, and I don't, it's not publicly owned yet from what Ken says, by council, so how do people get access to the gully? How do we have are we looking at a gully management plan? That's the questions that occur to me when I see something like this.
So I think your point, Councillor McPherson, is a report that gives a bit more context in the holistic form would be helpful, point noted. Secondly, what is proposed for this area? Sally's given you an update, there's a lot of more development to come. Thirdly, if you're raising a general issue about how we look after our gullies and what's the overall plan, could I suggest that we pick that up when we look at gullies? We've got a gully management plan of some sort already, haven't we?
But this one is not yet included in it?
No.
No.
So I'm happy to offline talk to Councillor
Thank you.
McPherson about this area if that helps.
I think it would help. Okay, any other questions on this matter? Right, so we've got a mover and a seconder. I'll put it to the vote on the voices. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against? Okay, thank you, Carrie. Thank you, Sally and Ken. The next item is a report on page 71, item 11. It's an update on the DLC. As you know, this is a new...
Spatial plan.
Oh, sorry, I've missed one.
One page.
Spatial plan, item 10. This is the pre-circulated report. You can take it that we've read the report. Leah, thank you. Are there some questions? I had some questions on the terms of reference. And that's on page 2 of the terms of reference 3.2. Was there a reason why the chairperson was to be one of the non-local government members? What was the thinking behind that, given that this is a plan that is so critical in terms of local government and not an independent? So what was the thinking behind that?
Yeah, look, I think it was to try and bring some independence to that process, Your Worship.
Independence to manage a meeting, is that?
I would imagine so. I mean, I wasn't involved directly in the discussion, but it's quite, as you'll appreciate, it's quite a normal practice when we're bringing different parties together to actually have an independent chair to reconcile some of those different positions. Whereas if one of the key council parties is actually chairing the meeting, it may make that difficult.
Could I ask a question just on that, Your Worship,
Right.
about in relation to future-proof, which was an earlier version, if you like, of this. The chairing of that was by,
We moved to a independent chair for exactly that reason.
but we started with council reps.
I'm not sure actually. Does anybody
I think we
have
did.
memory of that?
Do you remember future-proof, Brian?
When we started Future Proof, did we go straight to an independent chair or
Doug Hargis, I recall.
right from day one?
Right.
Thank you.
The reason I raised it, Blair, was because I sense that there aren't a lot of people who fully understand what a spatial plan is. And given that I've been on the governance group that's been looking at that, that's become increasingly apparent to me. So I did wonder whether it might be difficult to have a non-local government member as the chair, given the lack of knowledge and understanding about spatial planning. But I guess that can be overcome by ensuring that the independents have some good knowledge,
And
because this is new ground for New
Yes, it is.
Zealand.
And I note that the 5 independent members are recommended by the 10 local authority members, so the other 10 members identify those 5. So I guess that's the opportunity for the local authorities to influence the
All right.
qualifications of those.
Okay, the next question I've got is at 6.3, page 4, where there's going to be a recommendation back on that stage rather than approval required.
That's correct.
What was the thinking about that, rather than approval given approval further down?
The thinking was that that the 2 critical stages for approval were the draft and the final, that if the councils were dissatisfied with the engagement, that they would need to refer that back to the joint committee to reconsider and bring it back. So
So are you saying at stage, at 6.3B, that while it just says reported back, there is still room for the councils if they're not happy? Because I guess the reason I'm raising this is because I think it's very critical in terms of different areas across the Waikato, what that engagement looks like.
Yes, and I think there's 2 parts there. One is through the member that our council has on the joint committee, ensuring that member is reflecting our views is the first key element to that. Secondly, we also have through Brian Crode, a representative on the executive governance group for this project. So there's another avenue there to get feedback. And thirdly, if our council is dissatisfied with that, we can send that feedback back to the joint committee. So we're not approving or disapproving, we would just be saying we are unsatisfied that meets our test.
And so we could have a mechanism here to ensure that our feedback gets through that?
Yes.
Yep, okay. All right, so Councillor Liu's got a question, then Councillor Gallagher.
Thank you, Your Worship. A couple of questions. Just on the remuneration on the terms of reference under 3.5, is that, says each councillor shall be responsible for remunerating its rep on the committee for the cost, blah, 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 blah. is that just, are we expecting to pay this person extra for this?
No.
Or just
No,
it's
the
part of our
answer is
duty?
no.
Part of our duty,
Mhm.
okay.
No, just
And-
see this person.
Okay. How long is this process, do you think, going to take?
It's certainly going to take beyond the timeframe of our current long-term plan, so it's probably, it's a longer process.
Okay. And when it comes back to councils, is that going to be, when we're in a decision, at a decision point, is that going to be a majority decision? Unanimous decision?
Would need to be unanimous. and I think-
Unanimous amongst councils.
Yeah.
amongst the councils.
Amongst-
So I think, I guess we're under no illusion this will be challenging to get all councils in agreement on these elements. And I think, particularly the draft and the final, there may be parts where council are not supportive, but the balance they may be supportive. And I think that the quality of the feedback that goes back from the councils back to the joint committee will help in that process. What I think probably would be wise, though, is some form of pre-engagement with those councils before that came to the formal decision-making, to try and identify those areas and to work through that so that that doesn't all crop up at the last stage. That's going to be the challenge in this process around trying to get 10 councils in agreement all the way through.
Okay. Councillor Gallagher, you had some questions?
That's, those councillor O'Leary's questions have covered my ones, thank you.
All right. Any other questions on that? Okay. Yes, Councillor Mallett.
Is there a time urgency on this?
Now, the timeframe is entirely set by the councils through a mayoral forum process. I guess the only timeframe is how quickly do the councils collectively wish to advance and see the benefits from a spatial plan process. And so they've identified that the timeframe shall be after the completion of the long-term plan process. So in other words, it won't be done by June next year, but it's desirable to have it done as quickly as practicable.
Are all the other councils on the same time frame as regards 10-year plans?
Yes.
We're all on the same?
Yes.
Okay. I've been pretty upfront about not being flash on this particular project. And I still think there's a lot of,
So is it a question that you've got,
my-
Councillor
my-
Mallett, or is this about when we
Okay,
come to vote?
well, no, my question was, is there any time urgency on this? So I might then
got
go
that.
into suggesting that maybe we could delay this and have a workshop or something, just so we can understand what the thing's about.
So you can raise
'Cause
that. I'm going to move the motion. The recommendation is a motion. I'll be looking for a seconder. Councillor O'Leary has, but I did want to, before I take amendments, I did want to ask Councillor Gallagher whether you would like to be the alternate. I was going to move that I be the stand and you be the alternate.
Thank you, Your Worship, I'll accept.
Okay, so I will move the motion 9, 10, 11 and 12 with me as the member and Councillor Gallagher as the alternate. And my intention would be that Councillor Gallagher would attend all of the meetings as the alternate, because I think it's really useful to have the alternate always go anyway. And I thank you for accepting that. And Councillor O'Leary has seconded that. Now, is there an amendment to the...
Yeah, that this decision be delayed until a workshop can be organised, providing more information to council members.
And Your Worship, I'm going to second that.
Yes.
And I'm going to, if I can say something, I'm going to note that my understanding is when we had a little bit of introduction at the briefing / workshop of the day, that was sort of like at the end of, which we didn't have a chance for any detailed discussion. This has only arrived on our desks here. I think the process in determining something like this hasn't been great. I don't have any objection to the personnel you've suggested, and I think that part of it should be held over as well. I would like to see us being able to chew this around in a better discussion sort of arena, if you like.
So we've got Councillor Mallett's moved that amendment and Councillor McPherson seconded, and
Can I
he's...
just clarify what the amendment is, Your Worship? Is it that the report be received and then that the decision be delayed?
Yes.
Until there is a workshop.
Fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, for a workshop to be convened.
Thank you, I
Yes.
just wasn't sure on the
Councillor Mallett, I just want to see whether you wanted to speak.
Yes, I would. And I know you said it tongue-in-cheek. even when you introduced the item, you said no one knows what this means. But I
I didn't
just
quite
found
say
an
that actually,
unbelievable.
Councillor Mallett.
Pardon?
I didn't quite say that.
You
But
had your tongue
anyway,
in cheek, so maybe I didn't quite hear it right.
carrying on.
This is an area in which I've number of times I've asked people to try and explain what it is, and other GMs have tongue-in-cheek said they don't, they can't explain it. I would like to see some really firm terms of reference, so that we know where this thing stops, where it starts, and a proper layout of what the thing is going to do. Because it seems to be one of those options that this thing could grow like topsy, and once it gets too big, we'll never be able to stop it.
So, Your Worship, if I may just add some information. On the 27th of March, Council approved moving to stage 2 of the spatial plan, and attached to that report was quite a comprehensive report from the spatial plan group outlining exactly what the next stage was about. So that resolution has been passed by Council. This resolution's about the governance mechanism pertaining to that. So just a point of clarification.
Thank you for that. So I've had Councillor Mallett speaking. Councillor McPherson, you have spoken.
I take the point by the Deputy CEO about when they are talking about the governance side of things, and that's my problem, because we've got a situation where a council with half the population of the area concerned is only going to be given 1/15 of the vote, and we've already seen some of the issues that can arise on a smaller scale with the airport and with future-proof and that night. We're sort of beholden. We don't have say commensurate with our size. Is my worry in this.
Can I just add to that, though, the protection that we built into it, and it wasn't there originally, was the stages where the plan has to come back and actually be signed off by each council. So if at that stage you're not comfortable that our voice has been sufficiently heard, as a council you can choose to not endorse the plan.
I understand that, and Blair explained that the other day, Barry, but the issue could become, I can easily see it becoming 8 rural based councils want a certain direction to go into the spatial plan. Metro Council has a different view for very good reasons. They both have their views. A lot of pressure on us to accede to something because we're holding their feet up, and then the government's talking about amalgamation issues which are very linked potentially to this area, and they could say, well, the overwhelming majority of the councils think so and so, that's the direction that we're going to mandate.
Right.
So I'm just worried that we haven't got that bedded down properly.
So thanks, Councillor McPherson. I think you've articulated that. Are there any more speakers for and against the motion? I'll just speak for the motion. I accept that it's new territory for local authorities, but I think it's we're taking a lead on this after Auckland, and I think that's very good. Number 2, I'm actually very clear about what this is about, and I did share some of that the other day. I think Councillor Gallagher will bring a good level of knowledge about the community and our region that will add value to that. So thank you for agreeing to be part of it. I think, councillors, that my experience on this group so far to date has been that people working on it are very focused on what their job is. I haven't seen any incremental creep, if I can call it that, about what the project is about. And I do believe that there will be enormous benefits in the outcome of this project, because it will be the first time that we will have a proper understanding of our region and how we relate to that region as an urban authority, and I think it's got some real value. So I think the governance structure is right, and I'm very pleased that the terms of reference has touch points to the councils, because what will happen is if one council does not agree to what is put before them, then it won't proceed. And I think that is our measure, that's our ability to continue to manage the project from this council as we participate in the whole. The other thing I would say is that we are the large council in the region, and we do need to demonstrate a leadership role when we come to regional matters, and this is a way to do that and to participate strongly in that process. Okay, so I'm going to put it to the vote. We might go to the board.
So the amendment's first, is it?
The amendment is first, yes, and that is that we delay. So we'll put it on the board. So people are clear, we're voting on the amendment, which is to delay this decision and go to a workshop.
Sorry, Your Worship, I just haven't returned all councillors from the break.
Right, so let's just wait while
Beg
we...
your pardon.
Right, we can go now?
Yes,
Got Margaret out?
yes, I've done that.
Okay.
Can we just have the wording of the amendment, please?
Right, take your hands off the councillors and we'll start again. The wording of the amendment is,
That the report be received, and that this decision be delayed until a workshop can be organised, providing more information to council members.
right, so we're voting on that.
It's lost, Your Worship, 7 votes against, 4.
Right, so now we're going to vote on the motion.
Glad to support you, Gary.
Right.
It's all this side.
So now we're going to vote on the motion, right?
Me, what have I pushed it too early?
Carried 9 votes for, 2 against.
Thank you.
That screams like you, Gary.
Thank you,
need
Lee.
better me.
The next item is item 11, page 71. This is an update on the new district licensing committee. And this is your move, councillor Mallett? Seconded?
Yeah.
Deputy Mayor, are there any questions on this report? They can be answered by Brian Crode if there are. Yes, councillor Toon.
On the report there, it gives you the number of, pardon me, general managers licenses and special licenses and that. Do we ever refuse a licence? Could we, I'm just wondering whether we could have the information as to the number of approved and number
Yes.
declined?
Good point.
We can? Okay.
Generally,
Good point.
most people try and comply with the requirements to get a licence, so refusing a licence is actually quite rare, but we can put the refusals on there, sure.
But the other category of that, if I may ask, Brian, is that we've sometimes suspended existing licences, have we not? Or temporarily revoked them for a period, that sort of thing.
So we can expand the report, Your Worship, however it's valuable for councillors for monitoring purposes.
Right,
So
so,
perhaps if I could ask if there are any specific
Yes.
things you'd like, if you could just email me directly,
Yes.
and then we can build the report up and probably come back every 3 months or so.
no, that's a good idea. So, councillor Toon and councillor Macpherson, email and make sure that those things are captured in the report. Great, thank
Can I
you.
get, sorry, just a comment, and no, you don't stand up, Brian, it's not, all due respect, Leo, it doesn't really tell us much, does it? Because all it tells us, if there was no refusals, that you'll think we're not doing very well, or you'll think everyone's squeaky clean, and it's, I don't know that it tells it, I don't know.
Well, I
Don't know if
think,
it tells us.
I suppose though, councillor Mallett, if a councillor, we've heard from the general manager that actually they can include any amount of statistics, and if a councillor feels that's important for them to know, let's just put it in the report and assess that then. Councillor King?
I think, like a driver's licence, you qualify to make sure you get it. The reason you get it is so that they can take it off you
Right,
if you don't comply. That's why you have a licensing system.
okay. So, the recommendation has been moved and seconded, and that is to receive the report, basically. All those in favour?
Aye.
Any against that? Thank you. Bryce Street slip, item 12, page 73.
Yeah.
So this is a report that's come through from another committee, I think,
From finance,
from the finance, was it? And I think there is some updated information to provide from the CE.
Yes, Your Worship, if I'll provide that. Did you have a question first, councillor?
Yes, I just, not sure, page 74, point 7 and point 8, the same figure, 670,000. Am I right in saying that that's 670,000 plus 670,000? Or are those, it says that funding of 670,000 is allocated in the risk and opportunities, that a direct, and then the next point, that a direct appointment is made as an extension of the current contract works on the council and is delegated to approve these works for an additional 670,000 over the current contract sum. I'm just a little confused as what those 2 points say.
Okay, so the 670,000...
So in point 7?
Yes.
Yep.
That's for the work that's proposed on the land that we would purchase from Tainui.
Yes, and this is the stapling and
Yeah.
that, yep.
Yep. And then what 8 means...
Sorry, Lance. And now you said that's allocated to risk and opportunities. That's not something we've budgeted for.
No.
That's us spending and underspend on, so that's us using, moving it from out of the budget effect, eh?
Yeah,
okay.
yep.
Well, it's being funded through savings that have been
Yeah,
made in
yeah,
other
yeah.
areas. Yep.
Or including in the annual plan.
Mhm.
And 8, it's the same $670,000, but we currently have a contract to do the other 2 bits on the map that we've got a contractor in doing presently. So through our delegations to extend that contract that we currently have, that's the appropriate wording we need, because that's the additional
So you're
670
moving
over the
that
current contract.
into the existing, so you're
Yeah.
moving into that contract, okay, so that's the approval you want. And that was the economy of scale you told us about the
Yeah,
other time.
yeah.
If we get them to do the work now while they're there already, it's cheaper than getting them to come back and...
Yeah.
okay.
Well, also, we don't want to go out to tender and get a different contract because it'll be a...
Mate.
I remember all that, I just...
Now the CEO, an update?
Thank you, Your Worship. Before we get into discussion, so as requested, I've met with the Chief Executive of Tainui Group Holdings, and we've worked through and explained the remediation project and the contribution that it would make by contributing the block of land that TGH own. As a result of that, TGH understand the public benefit from permanently fixing this popular walkway and have agreed to transfer the land at no cost to council. So that was... So I had verbal confirmation of that this morning.
See what a week's delay does?
Yeah.
So I
But I think
assume that means
positive
we've got $1 in our opportunities and risk report now.
I'll donate the dollar.
The dollar?
If that helps, yeah.
How
Keep that
we
in
going to
mind.
spend that, we monitor that?
If you can keep that in mind when you have the discussion later on this afternoon.
Does that include GST, or is GST on top of the dollar?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you for that update. Any more questions on this report? Councillor Young, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question further to Councillor Mallett's one. I know that number 7, that's the 670,000, number 8. And then the second bullet point under number 13, 700, that's 650 was statement, but that was mentioned on the number 7 as already for the
Can you
soil netting
number?
and the recent payment.
So Councillor Young was saying,
Helen, can you...
explain the numbers, please.
There's 2 different figures.
The cost of the remediation and the walkway reinstatement comes to 750,000. We can make savings of 80,000 if we add on to the current contract, so the total amount is 670 that we need to fund. So the 670,000 for next year is over the total contract cost of all the work for the 3 areas.
So if we didn't have that economies of scale by putting it with a current contract, the full cost is 750,000.
Okay.
Then the 670 figure is by getting that economy of scale and being added into that current contract. So
So it saves the money.
sorry about the confusion in the
The total
report.
is
So the
670.
total cost, and then if we make a decision, then we get the economy of scale.
Save that 80,000.
Yeah.
So we save money.
Yes.
Thank you, that's good work. Now, any other questions on this report? No, so I'll move the recommendation with some amendments to the...
So, Your Worship, you might just want to look in
I'm going to change 6, yes,
Yeah,
I'm going
yeah.
to do that. So 5 accepted, 6, that the riverbank land is purchased from Waikato Tainui for purchase price of $1.
And can I just have, just a question, Your Worship. What was the figure it was proposed last meeting we paid a week ago?
50.
50,000. So
So
we
the
saved
C-
50,000
yes.
by holding the firm. Thank you. Just wanted confirmation.
49,000.
Oh,
49,000.
I've been corrected by the
So,
finance
sorry,
committee.
CFO, you've got a query that you want us to make sure we've written this accurately, so what would that be?
$1 plus G's, if he needs.
Let him speak.
Sorry, Your Worship, my apologies for losing it. Basically, the work will be undertaken in July through a couple of months, from July, August, September. That'll be in the next financial year annual plan. My recommendation is that I bring that back, the 670,000 as part of the draft annual plan for that period. That's probably the cleanest way of addressing that.
So looking at the recommendation, apart from the adjustment in 6, are you suggesting any further adjustments in 7 or 8?
Yes, so that the $670,000 is included within the,
So are you looking at 8?
I'm looking at number 7. The funding of 670,000 is included within the 2014-15 annual
Ah,
plan.
yes, okay, included in the 2014 annual plan. Yep. So we take out risks and opportunities. Mhm.
But ultimately, it will come back.
Yes, it will too, you're quite right. So if,
Do you want the end of paragraph 6 to be funded from unbudgeted revenue?
no, I think that can just come out for $1. I don't think we need to make reference to that. So,
You'll
so-
notice that in the, don't you have to have some consideration when you make a sale?
Yep.
yes, $1.
$1.
Right, so-
We'll make it work.
So you do have to put the dollar in there, seriously, don't you?
Yes, you do have to have consideration
plus
for
GST,
purchase of land. So can we just while we just get the words right, and then I see there are some hands up, so we'll go to those. So number 5 is right. Number 6, that 750 square metres of riverbank land is purchased from Waikato Tainui for $1. And that 7 is going to now read, funding of 670,000 is allocated, is included in the 2013-14 annual plan,
The 14-15 annual.
14-15 annual plan,
CapEx.
okay? For the remediation, soil nailing, etc. And then 8 remains as is,
Yes,
and 9 remains as is.
yes.
Okay.
Your Worship, I've just got
So
one.
we're clear on the wording?
Your worship?
Right, thank you. So in order of people having their hands up, I had Councillor King and I had Councillor Pascoe, and I did have, it was Councillor Wilson, and then it was Councillor Mallett. Right,
I'd just like to point out that I think Tainui have been generous in giving us this land. They could have held out $50,000 and we would have paid $50,000. So I just want it noted, thank you to Tainui.
okay,
Secondly is, from what Barry said, Tainui has given us this bit of land. They didn't ask for $1. I know that technically money's supposed to change hands, but they have given it to us. We can't give $1 to somebody who's given us something because it's a change of giving something for something. They have given it to us. They don't want anything for it, from what Barry said. Technically, I understand we've got to offer $1, but they have given it to us. They didn't ask for $1.
so I think Councillor King,
If I gave something, I don't want
because of
$1.
my knowledge,
Takes
what I
away
would
from-
say to you is that you must give some consideration, and $1 is the consideration. But I take your point. and
It takes away from the whole gift in the first place when
Yep.
we, in our society, would have to give something to show, and it's not a gift anymore. So it just, $1 or to accept $1.
And that's understood, and they understand the mechanics of a land transfer requiring that. So
Great. Councillor Pascoe.
Yeah, my question is just around the 670,000. I recall that there is a regional council subsidy available to us, and I just wonder whether we shouldn't be reporting the amount that would go in the 2014.
Number 9 is watershed, isn't it?
Yes, and we'll report back on that.
So we include the full amount in and not the net amount?
Because we don't know what.
We may not get it.
Oh, I see. I thought it was automatic in the.
No, they've given a strong indication, but still has to go through the application process.
Yeah, good point. Councillor Wilson, question.
Yeah, look, it's a really simple question. The 670 figure that I recall was for our bit of land that we owned and that we were going to invest in strengthening and retaining. And that at the beginning of all of this, the Tainui, they were going to have to sort their own stuff out. Just tell me, is the 670 the same 670?
No.
So it's an additional amount?
Yes.
So although on one hand, Councillor King will tell us that Tainui has been particularly generous giving us this bit of land, this is the land that had subsided. This is the same bit of land that they would have had to repair in theory, because it is very close to some properties they own.
Yes, it would be their choice if they'd repaired it.
And of course now, through this very generous gift, we're going to repair, and the Hamilton ratepayers are going to invest in strengthening this bit of land.
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor Mellon?
Just the timing of this.
I can support this. I can support this.
Our annual year end, you said the 14-15 annual.
Yes, year end 30th of June.
So this transaction will occur next year.
Was there a liability on Tainui to repair, to fix this land? And my understanding is there wasn't. So
That's correct.
therefore, I just lost point of that.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor?
Secondly, is the earthquake and war damages able to help with slips like this? And have we approached them?
Was there a war?
Earthquake and War Damages Commission.
We have
do they
looked
get
into it,
money?
the answer's no.
No.
There's no funding from them.
Right.
Have we applied?
No, we haven't, but we've looked into it.
Because there have been other slips on the edge of the Waikato where they have.
Sorry, one subsequent question.
I'm not aware of council getting any money for that, but
No, not council.
I can get back to you offline if you like.
Right, okay, so I guess the point made is that we do investigate all opportunities and options for funding. I mean, Earthquake and War Commission sounds fairly tenuous, but yeah.
I know they have repaired our riverbank in the past for private housing, on private property.
And we look at
There's a reason.
NZTA, if it's a transport route and cycle route and all that sort of stuff. So so we work with Chris's team in looking at all avenues for external funding.
But we didn't get any NZTA funding for that cycleway when we first did it, because it was all parks and gardens sort of thing.
Yes.
So it wouldn't have been an NZTA issue even to look at that for repairs, would it?
I think it's something that we're going to be looking at for all the cycleways, so, yeah. But I'm saying, it was a generic comment I was making. Yeah.
Deputy Mayor, you had a question? Comment. So we'll get to that. Any other questions? So I've moved them. Sorry, Councillor Wilson had a question?
Yeah, look, Your Worship, I hate to labour the point, but I'm just again clarifying. I recall in the past that we chose to reroute the cycle path and the walk path to circumvent this piece of land. And there was a deliberate decision of council to do that. We also spoke a time about how that would be good potentially for local businesses, that we would drag people away from the river walkway into town and that they would rejoin. And that was when the original...
What's your question, Councillor?
I just want to clarify. And that was when... Could you remind me what the original proposal was when all this came about? That either we had asked Tainui or they had indicated they were going to repair some of the land. Just remind me the history
I
there.
think, General Manager, it comes back to the engineering report that was obtained about slips.
So council...
Well, sorry, Your Worship, procedurally, actually, with all due respect, Your Worship, what I think is that we are relitigating a decision already been made.
Councillor Wilson, I think it's actually quite clear, because you are really clear when you ask questions, so let the General Manager answer.
My recollection is that council resolved to fix the slips on its land and also the land under the bridge abutments for Claudelands Bridge. I'm not aware of a direct resolution saying that we wouldn't fix the Tainui land, so if you're talking procedurally, so.
Your Worship, with all due respect, there is one, because there was a long debate about the fact that people would have to come into town. We talked about the business. This council has dealt with it. This is why I'm astonished that this has come back. It's as though they've come into the back door.
My recollection is that discussions were to continue with Tainui.
It was.
And probably what you've missed, Councillor Wilson, the previous item at the Finance Committee, which this report doesn't have, a similar report, but the report to the Finance Committee actually had a an options matrix around potential ways to resolve this issue to get the walkway right through the CBD again on the river walkway, and it actually looked at the benefits and the costs and the consequences of each of those.
But I think if I could grab this, Lance, I think the question that is being asked is, was there a prior clear decision of council to reroute around this area and not to remediate this piece of land? It's not my recollection, but that's what the question is. I know we talked about the different options, and that was one of the possibilities.
Do you know the actual resolution, Helen, do you? So quiet everyone, we have an answer.
I don't know the actual resolution, but I know there wasn't a clear resolution around not remediating the land. There was a clear resolution around remediating the council-owned land and entering into continuing negotiations
With Tainui to encourage them to, so that we could get access to their land to do the repair, yeah.
So by default, in the meantime, you would have to reroute, which we've done.
Which we have done.
That answers my question, and when able, I will speak. Okay.
All right, so are there any other questions on this? So I've moved that resolution. Is it seconded by the Deputy Mayor is seconding it? Now, you wanted to speak, Deputy Mayor. Off you go.
Look, I just want to reiterate that there was no obligation on Tainui to contribute, and we understood that very well at the last meeting. So on that basis, actually, it is a generous gift from Tainui, and we should acknowledge that. And so, Barry, thank you for the work that you did with Mike Polio to reach this conclusion. Thank you to Councillor McPherson, Steel Balls McPherson, who last week persuaded his colleagues...
Deputy Mayor...
Sorry?
It's unparliamentary language.
Don't know.
I'll withdraw that. I'll
Just
withdraw that.
stop while I talk. So you're withdrawing that comment? Thanks.
So Councillor McPherson persuaded colleagues last week to offer the dollar. But also I have to mention the fact that the Mayor and myself had separate discussions with the leaders of Tainui, the Chair of Te Aratara, and we made the point clearly to him that the community benefit in doing this, and he undertook to take that back to Tainui Group Holdings. So we've all worked together to get a very good outcome for the community, and I'm very pleased that this is the outcome, and we can get on and fix the problem and create the national cycleway, walkway that was the rationale for all of this work.
At the end of the day, Your Worship, I'll be guided by my colleagues, but I would prefer not to support this for the following reason. Historically, we had a lease on this piece of land that Tainui owned to enable our walkway. There was a slip. And the lease that we had was a very small lease. I recall, I think it's like $1 a year. It was a peppercorn lease. And I recall feeling uncomfortable with Tainui's position, where they basically insisted, well, since you guys are using it, you guys fix it. And I am clear that this council in the past sort of said, well, we may continue to negotiate with Tainui, but there is actually some benefit of rerouting the path into the city and rejoining it, and that we would spend the 670. I am disappointed to hear that we're going to pay another 670 to repair land that isn't ours, and the whole assertion that they've now gifted us this land and that we should thank them. I'm sorry, Councillor King, I don't join you in that enthusiasm, because when somebody gets something and you've got to spend $670,000 being able to use it, on the face of it, it doesn't seem much of a gift. So I won't be supporting the recommendation, but understand those who might have a different view.
Yes, Councillor.
Just a point of clarification, Councillor Wilson. You said another 670,000. Is that an additional 670,000 to what we've already spent, or is it
Correct.
just the one 670?
No, and thanks for that, because Councillor Pascoe, I asked that deliberate question, and I've had confirmation from staff it's an additional 670.
No, I don't think it is.
Well, I've got the financial officer nodding behind you. I've got two other staff saying that it is.
Thank you. Yes, it is.
It is. So,
Slips.
yeah, so it's 1.2, you're the accountant, 1.4 million.
Thank you, Councillor Wilson. It's clear now.
1.34.
Are there any
1.34.
other speakers for or against?
I mean, Your Worship, I think that was a valid point in light of some of us around the chamber thought we were only talking 670,000 and the financial consequences.
Councillor Wilson, I think the point's been made, actually. So thank you for making it. Right, any other speakers for or against? Right, we're going to vote on this. Do we need to use the board, do you think? Might be useful.
Yeah, I think so.
So I've moved the motion as it is.
It's not mine.
Gary?
It's not
Councillor
mine.
Mallett, we're voting. Thank you. Thank you, Anne.
Thank you.
Now, the next item is a local government remit, item 13,
I'll move.
page 77. I might just get the Deputy Mayor just to speak to this, although it's from the Democracy Manager. It
Thank you,
comes
Worship.
by heritage.
This doesn't happen often, and I can't
No.
remember in the last 9 years how many times we've been asked to support a remit. Wellington has asked us to consider supporting a remit. The remit is there. It's around heritage buildings and earthquake provisions. I did take the opportunity of putting this, running this past the first meeting of the Heritage Committee, and they were very relaxed about us supporting it. However, we don't have to support it. That doesn't mean to say we don't disagree with it, but it's just a move by Wellington to gather a number of local authorities in behind the remit. The remit goes to the local government conference in Nelson, and some of you are attending that conference, and then it is put on the table and passed on to government. So if anyone has any particular disagreement with that, I'm very relaxed whether we support it or whether we don't. So I think it's largely a straightforward matter.
Right, so before I go to Councillor Mallett, I just want to ask whether, Brian, you have seen this, and have you got any comments to make on this in terms of, because our council, of course, has made a lot of submissions on this issue, and they've been very good and quite full submissions.
Look, Your Worship, my view, it really depends on whether Hamilton City wants to support Wellington and the broader sector. Like, we would be hopeful that we're in pretty good position with the work we've done. The feedback we've had from the bureaucrats in Wellington, that our assessment looks pretty solid, and we're hopeful that that will be recognised. So, you know.
I suppose my question is actually
Is there
whether
anything
this
here-
at odds with our submission that it would not be appropriate for us to support this remit because it might be at odds with our position in our submissions. And there's nothing?
I don't think so, no.
Right, thank you. Councillor Mallett.
I just have a concern when I said the word heritage buildings in there, and I don't understand it. There's a heck of lots. I just want some clarity.
Yes.
The situation I'm concerned of, and I think some of us have heard about it before, where people own buildings, and they have one of these heritage designations slapped on them. The building is untenable or unable to be made economic, and then suddenly the owner is required to lift the building up to earthquake level 33%, 66%, which frankly is unable to be done. How does this affect that? Are we talking about having some more funding made available to help people in those situations? Is that what it does? How would it affect those sort of guys? Because I did no doubt there are lots of buildings.
Yeah,
So I think your question's clear, so Deputy Mayor?
It's a very good question. Some councillors actually have allocated funding in their plans, a couple of $100,000, to allow professional advice on strengthening, professional advice on alterations, and a number of other issues. There are those councils that might have money for assisting maybe a private owner of a house that's been designated a heritage house to maybe help with re-roofing or rewiring or repiling. So it's really going to come out of government as the extent that they will go now that these earthquake strengthening regulations have really hit home.
I think, Councillor Mallett, looking at the remit wording, it's not suggesting that local authorities go down this track. What it's saying is that government should be turning its mind to its obligation to assist or giving mechanisms, tools to enable local authorities to make those decisions themselves. But I don't see anything in the wording that would speak to any of the concerns that you've raised. I think that's answered your question. Councillor King?
I think we've got a very strong local policy. Is it policy or a bylaw?
Policy.
Policy on this, and I understand that a huge percentage of boarding owners have already complied, 80% or a very large number. We're leading the country on this. You've got other councils who haven't done anything at all and are just waiting for central government to come in with legislation on this. This is proposing that we let central government dictate back to our council that we give rates, rebates, grants and provisional advice at, and don't you worry, it won't be central government's costs, and it clearly says that here, rates, rebates, which is going to affect our council. So your proactive building owners who have gone out and done their work have paid for it. Those who've been left behind, those who haven't done anything, what we're saying is we're supporting central government. We're supporting Wellington to go to central government, to ask central government to legislate, to tell us as a council possibly, when it comes to rates, rebates anyway, grants, I don't know where the grants are going to come from, and provisional advice, which means probably money for engineering reports, which a huge percentage of Hamilton building owners have already gone ahead and done, and spent hundreds of thousands of dollars upgrading their buildings.
So I think, Councillor King, your point is that because we've already gone so far down the track, that there's no benefit in us to support this remit, it could have some negative consequences.
We shouldn't be supporting this. This flies directly against our own policy.
So I'm just reminding me, Deputy Mayor, you moved it and who seconded it?
Well, look, to make it easier, I think it would be a negative if we were to vote against the remit. I prefer to withdraw it.
Right. If there's some uncertainty, councillors, what the Deputy Mayor said is, look, he felt an obligation to bring it to us because, you know, it's a remit for local government conference, and if we are to support the remit or reject it, something of this substance needed some guidance from the council. But if people are uneasy about it, then we don't take a view on it, and it's as simple as that. So, Councillor Pascoe?
Yeah, I just wonder whether the Wellington City Council would take an amendment to the remit.
They won't. They put the remit
because
in.
the first two bullet points.
Councillor Pascoe, they won't.
Okay.
They put the remit in, and that's been circulated for everyone to know what it's about. Yep. Councillor Miller.
Just adding to what Andrew was saying and what Gordon sort of said, was I think Phil, someone presented to us on this, on earthquake stuff just a couple of weeks ago.
Yes,
Was it
that's
Phil?
right.
Yeah. And he was quoted in the paper and said to us, I think, that it would be unfortunate if we had to redo all this stuff. So I'm coming to agree totally with what Andrew says, and if Gordon would just pull the thing, it'd probably be good.
Right. So you happy with that? Right. So we're withdrawing this. So is that all we have to do? Yes. Yes. Okay. Right.
Can make a decision?
We don't need to resolve anything? No. Okay. So, look, thanks for that. That was a really useful discussion, actually. So that's good. So what will happen then is when that remit is presented at the local government conference, we won't take a view. Okay?
How do we record that in our minutes? Something came up and we didn't vote.
We haven't made, there's been no decision
There's been-
made.
yeah. So therefore there's no authority for us to vote on the remit.
You don't have to make a decision on it.
Okay.
All right, so that's the end of the public section.
Your Worship, can I, just while I've got everybody, in case anyone breaks away,
This is public. So I'm just about
Yes.
to move into confidential, so,
That might be easier.
okay, so I'm going to move that we go to confidential, and I've got seconded by councillor Pascoe. All those in